Now, postmodernism says that it questions norms, and if it had stayed there, that would be fine. In fact, that could be noble. But like most noble lies, postmodernism is flowery language that covers a sadistic agenda. We're told that postmodernism rejects the status quo, but it does go a little bit deeper, and it actually ends up questioning all rules and all authority, and they wish to reject all truth. They say my truth and your truth, but never the truth. Postmodernism rejects truth actually as a neo-colonial power game meant to oppress and marginalize people. And so postmodernism wants to resist the truth at all costs. And make no mistake, the churches that should be resisting this and shouting the truth from the rooftops are actually infested with this kind of postmodern garbage. And this was on display just recently, just last week actually, in a clip of Andy Stanley preaching about homosexuality. So you can check that out here.
A gay person, when I say gay, men and women, okay? A gay person who still wants to attend church after the way the church has treated the gay community, I'm telling you, they have more faith than I do. They have more faith than a lot of you. A gay person who knows, you know what? I might not be accepted here, but I'm going to try it anyway. Have you ever done that as a straight person?
Be aware that whenever anyone speaks the way you just heard Andy Stanley speaking about people groove with large, broad brush strokes and speaking about them in generalized terms, that actually they are intending to lie. They are intending to try to fabricate things. So whenever somebody says, oh, black people this, this is all an attempt to obscure reality and to try to give a generalized sense of authority to something that actually you cannot be that authoritative on, because there is no such thing as all black people. This is the idea that like all black people love fried chicken and watermelon. In fact, it's kind of a racist thing to assume that all black people are all the same anymore than all white people love tuna casserole and love wearing loafers. These kind of generalized terms, again, try to give a sense of authority so that we won't push against the ideas being presented, but they are always an attempt to really, truly obscure the truth. And so Andy Stanley here speaking about all homosexuals as though all homosexuals are the kind of quintessential example of what a servant should look like. Really, like all of them, even like this. All right, tip number 2. Now, this should go without saying, but unfortunately today it doesn't all the time. If your pastor has less faith in a person in active rebellion to the Word of God, then you probably need a new pastor and you probably need a new church. Now, tip number 3, you need to find a Christian leader who understands the difference between sympathy and truth. A pastor who understands the difference between sentimentality and being honest with people. See, there is no distinction between being truthful and being loving, unless the way you're telling the truth is mean-spirited. But one of the greatest acts of compassion that you can actually participate in is telling people the truth. Here, Stanley is willing to obscure and to lie for the sake of gaining brownie points with people, like I already mentioned, in active rebellion to the Word of God. Stanley says a gay person that still wants to attend church after all that the church has done to them is in some way commendable. So quick question. What exactly has the church done to them? See, as edgy and as real as Stanley thinks he's being right now, what he's doing is what the church has been doing for a generation. They sit on their little stools, they put their cardigans on, and they give you a TED talk, and then they tiptoe around the truth and call that thoughtfulness while they condemn Christians for being too condemning. See the problem there? All while never venturing to come within a mile of the real job of a Christian pastor. Stanley fails to see that he totally missed an opportunity to actually love people by telling them the truth about what the Bible actually says about homosexuality. See, even people who disagree can at least honor somebody who's willing to be honest. See, because loving people and telling them the truth at this time, where the social cost is higher than ever before, is actually a sign to people that you care enough about them to tell them the truth. And besides, true love at the end of the day is willing the good of the other. Lying to people is never willing their good. Telling them the honest truth is the way that you truly show you care about their good. So, let's address this supposed reputation the church has earned because of its dark past of judgmentalism, hypocrisy, and finger-pointing. This is almost entirely an invention of people who hate Christians and Christianity. That simple-minded pastors like Stanley believe without even testing. The real story of the church, but the one you rarely ever hear, and unfortunately rarely ever hear from big pastors like Stanley, simply because the media is controlled by leftists, sounds very little like what Stanley is saying, and it actually sounds way more like this real story here.
I got pregnant while attending a very conservative Christian college, and here's what happened. Let me give you a second to process what I just said. To give you some context, I was playing basketball there on a full ride scholarship and was at the very end of my sophomore year. To be honest, I feared judgment from the college and God's people, and I contemplated abortion. Thankfully, I did not show up to my appointment that day, which is a topic for another time, but I had to face my coach and the people that worked there in the higher up places. I went to them and said, honestly, here's what happened, and here's where I'm at now. And I did not receive the reaction that I thought I was going to receive. They were immediately kind and gracious and were so excited for me to have a child. And they said they would do whatever they could to help me graduate. Because as you may know, it is nearly impossible to transfer private units to any sort of public school. So they wished me well on my way, and I moved back home with my mom. I had my beautiful daughter. On my very first Mother's Day as a mom, my coach called me up and he said, we have a spot on the team and we have some scholarship money. Want to play?
But let's get it straight. The mainstream narrative about Christianity is controlled by people who hate Christians and Christianity. And when pastors start preaching it, it sounds a little weird. When they start believing these lies, it makes you wonder why. And then that natural impulse, according to people like Stanley, is that you just don't love people. See, it's a very human sympathy that is on display here in Stanley, but not necessarily love. We need to know the difference. People like him lack the ability to see that human empathy makes room for dangerously immoral choices. And if you love somebody, you don't do that. While the politician, the activist, the professor, and even the pastor encourage us towards sympathetic answers to today's issues, they neglect that their honest but misplaced emotions distort our thinking and often lead to unjust and immoral outcomes that hurt others in the long run, even more than the issues they wish to solve. Therefore, the real cure for society is and has always been people bold enough to tell the truth, which leaves us asking, why are moral leaders in our nation afraid to do that? All I know is this. For those who care little about the church and religion in the West, let me please tell you, this impacts us all. The truth matters, and it always will in every institution in society. See, if church leaders won't do it, you should view that as a canary in the coal mine. You might not be worried about what's going on in churches in America because you don't attend and don't believe in God, but you should be worried about it. Because if the biggest churches in America are not places where you can hear the truth anymore, then I ask you, what institution can you hear it from? So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely need to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Anything Heard come your way. Thanks for watching.